Hey guys, Tommy Carrigan here with Tommy Untamed. Thanks for tuning in. We got an awesome guest today. You're going to enjoy it. You're really leaning into the most interesting man in the world, the Dos Equis guy. And I remember when it first started, it was like the first person to point that out. It was such like a low hanging, like of course he looks like the guy, but you our conversation just the last week is it's like Formula One level street cars and like trillionaire yachts and like your posts look like those posts that like trust fund kids put up in Greece where they're just like, I had to grind for this view. Have you ever seen those where it's like, I worked for this, and it's like your dad owns like DuPont Chemical. But it kind of dawned on me. I was like, you're becoming the most interesting man in the world. I mean, it looked just like sports cars and yachts with like clear blue water. And so I don't know. That's seems like things are
Well, and,
continuing
and
going up
don't
for you.
forget dressage horses.
Yeah, exactly. So it really, like, the more I was starting looking at it, I was like, if this was like a movie, like, it'd be kind of tacky. But this is actually happening right now. And it didn't even dawn on me until like after we had finished talking. I was like, he's kind of like the most interesting man. And I was like, oh wait, he actually is. But yeah, so everybody listening, please go into the description. Please go follow Dr. Malone on Twitter, his Substack, his Getter, all that good stuff. And yeah, I always know, just as like a general, almost like buoys in the ocean warning of a tsunami. I always know when something big is happening when I get disparate texts from people or texts from disparate groups of people that follow the show that are unrelated about a singular topic. And that was all regarding RFK and the somewhat recent alterations or changes or committees or whatever to the vaccine schedule. And again, for everybody in the description, please, or for everybody listening, please go into the description. Please go grab his books there. They're in the description. But I don't really know what exactly has changed, and I certainly can't speak on it with any authority. So I'm kind of just gonna completely hand it over to you and give you free reign to do whatever.
Well, change is in the wind, or you could say we're winning,
All right.
and we ought to own it and celebrate it, and and not apologize for it. All of us have worked really hard to get to this point, but we're a long ways away from the finish line. We're winning, but those are skirmishes and battles. They're not the war.
Mm.
But President Trump is absolutely on the warpath against wokeism. And we put out a recent essay about his canceling uh, tens of millions of dollars of subscriptions and subsidies for Springer Verlag, which is a publisher of Nature and really the leading publisher of scientific journals all over the world, in large part because they have gone completely woke. And of course, they censored and published falsehoods, I'm choosing my words, during COVID. Uh, um, and so President Trump has decided that's that. We're done. We're not going to subsidize you guys anymore. And the NIH supposedly is going to be starting its own journals. And it's no longer going to be authorizing academics to pay the exorbitant fees. It's like $30,000 or $50,000 to publish a paper in one of the big journals. It's crazy, stupid high.
Why?
And you and I and the listeners subsidize that through our tax dollars. So President Trump has said basically, hell no, we've had enough on that one and on a whole lot of other things. And one of the things that has occurred is with his Secretary of Health and Human Services, just to recap, HHS is the largest federal agency, bar none, full stop, bigger than DOD.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of that has to do with the little tiny division that Dr. Oz manages called CMS. That's the Medicaid shop. Huge amount of money goes out the door for that. And the president has allowed the secretary of HHS enormous latitude in the face of all kinds of bureaucratic obstructionism. I can't tell you how it's just bad in every single agency, not to mention Tulsi and Cash, et cetera. All across the federal government, the resistance is enormous. And people are having crying sessions and all this kind of stuff. They've cranked up lawfare to overdrive, trying to stop any reductions in force, otherwise known as layoffs, or being made redundant. But the truth is that the layoffs associated with Doge and others in the federal workforce all are smaller than the ones that occurred under, drum roll, Bill Clinton.
Hmm.
Okay, so all of this crying about this, that, and the other thing, and how the government is being decimated. Well, what about your hero, Mr. Bill? And then, of course, there is the termination of the funding for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, otherwise known as NPR and PBS, the firing of Stephen Colbert. I mean, it's just the pace has not slowed. We're getting, I think, a little bit numb to it. And
Hmm.
on Kennedy's part, he is taking on big food and winning. Remember that he pushed to try to get the sugar sodas out of the SNAP program. That's food stamps for those of you that are not DC acronym aficionados. And and the the big food and big soda, ergo Coca-Cola in particular, set up AstroTurf organizations that were paying conservative influencers $1,000 a tweet to say things like withdrawing sugar from
Oh yeah.
SNAP program is an infringement of freedom to speech. That didn't go over very well. And so what's happened is that it turned out the law was such that Kennedy couldn't just carte blanche eliminate those subsidies. And so he's been working with the states. That's in very successfully. A number of states have eliminated the high sugar soda pops, et cetera, from their SNAP programs. Yay. I mean, I tell you, you mentioned that I was in Corfu in Italy. Uh, that's not coming out of my pocket, by the way. That was a close friend of mine who happens to also be a close friend of Bobby's. Uh, um, Subsidizing us, paying for us to come out and see him on what's really a floating conversation that he has in his boat. Calling it a boat when it's 170 foot long
Yeah.
is a little bit over the top. I call it a ship. But in any case, he pays for us to fly out every summer, spend a week with him talking about topics of the day and strategizing a little bit, working on books, etc. The first book, Lies My Government Told Me, started on one of those boat trips. Actually, so did the second one. So it's kind of a floating salon, writer's workshop, hangout spot with the guy that um, I think the best interview is Megan Kelly. If you look for Gavin Debecker and his book and interviews about uh, fear, and that's kind of been his big shtick. He created, so The Gift of Fear is the title, and he created a security company that turned out to really go big. It's kind of security for the really high profile at risk persons, like I won't name names, but one of them was during the election, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And then after the assassination attempts, another one that was protected by Debecker and Associates was now President Trump. So that's what he does for a living. He's really up on security, very cautious, And just for context, he had his good friend Robert F. Kennedy and his wife out on the same boat the week before we were there. So it was a real pleasure to get to hang out with him again and learn from him. He coaches me quite a bit, and also shared various insights into what's going on from his point of view with Bobby and HHS and government. He was head of protocol uh, in the Reagan administration, Gavin was, so he's very familiar with the government. Uh, so I come back. We did Corfu and then scooted down to Gallipoli, a name that you probably remember, but there's no sign of battle there, and I didn't see any Australian graves. They're probably there, but wasn't in the area where we were. Gallipoli was a lovely place, and then we went north along the eastern shore of Italy to Brindisi, which is where we left from last Thursday night. And it was just really nice that the eastern shore of Italy is not inundated with tourists. There's hardly any tourists there. And in July, what it's full of is Italians from the countryside escaping to the ocean. It's a rocky coast mostly, some beaches, a lot of ancient medieval towns. Like there was one town we visited that was overtaken by the Moors in the 1400s. And the Moors, which is to say Muslims, when they took over the town, they said, well, if you convert to the Muslim faith, then we'll spare your life. But if you're going to stay Christian, you're going to get beheaded. So there was something like 350 Christians that got beheaded on a single rock. And a year and a half later, the Christians took the town over again. This is because of the kind of history that you find there. The town is, all the streets are narrow and paved with old marble, little tiny shops, Italians out in young, old families, kids. It was just a fantastic thing to see. They all start coming out on the street about 7 p.m. And then they're still pouring into these towns at 11 p.m. at night. I mean, I don't know what their nightlife is and when they wake up in the morning, but it was more than I could tolerate. But really, really pleasant to see this culture. That it's kind of Italian culture where it's the norm to put on good clothes, dress up a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and go walk in the town with your family and your kids and everything else and meet the others and do a little bit of shopping. Very different. I didn't see hardly any fat people. I didn't see any beggars except for one mother of a very damaged young man who was missing legs. Uh, that was it. No tents, uh, no litter on the streets, none of that. It was just really pleasant people, good food, endless seafood. I don't know how many mussels I ate. And then we fly back to the States to get to the point with the Make America Healthy Again movement and the sugary sodas. And the very first thing that comes to mind as we're strolling through the airport is, my God, Americans are fat. Uh, so Bobby has got a task in front of him because that obesity translates to diabetes, pre-diabetes, heart disease, all kinds of stuff. And you'll remember that President Trump gave him the mandate through the Maha Commission to show measurable improvements in Americans' health within 2 years. That's a pretty heavy lift. And of course, why 2 years? The midterm. Duh. And so that's the genesis of this Maha Commission report that came out a few weeks ago. And by the way, scheduled in a few weeks from now is going to be the next volume in that. The first one was a threat assessment in which it was pointed out the top headline was that if we continue on this track, our children are going to live shorter, sicker lives than their parents. That's just not okay. And so, what are you going to do about it? So, the next commission report is the battle plan. It's the strategic document that will lay out what's going to be done over the next few years and how we're going to approach this, changing the food pyramid, USDA guidelines. But in all of this, the one hot button is agriculture. And the president very much appreciates the support of the farmers of America, what we might call the flyover states. And that includes big ag. And he's very hesitant to do things that will hurt agriculture. But yet we have the buyer, the organization, the company notorious in its ethics, the company that bought Monsanto, which makes Roundup. They bought it just before the Roundup lawsuits were peaking. And their market cap has crashed because of the glyphosate lawsuits. And so they're busy pushing through legislation surreptitiously, trying to cram it into the budget bill that will, here's another rim shot and drum roll. For any of you who remember what happened after the vaccine industry got indemnification under Ronald Reagan. In other words, you can't sue the vaccine companies, right? So the pesticide and herbicide industry is pushing through legislation that'll make it so that you can't sue them for anything having to do with their products or toxicity from their products. It forces the EPA to not update any of the regulations. It sets a time stamp that starting at about 10 years ago, any of the literature from the last decade can no longer be considered in evaluating potential toxicity associated with these products. And they're trying to slide this under the table and doing everything they can to destroy Bobby Kennedy, as is the pharmaceutical industry. So he's bucking some big money and powerful organizations, bless his heart. I don't know how he tolerates it, but as Gavin likes to say, Bobby is thriving. He just loves this. He loves what's going on in DC. He loves the fight. He loves being in the scrum and in the battle and mixing it up. And watch for a future Substack. He's just flying back, I think, today or yesterday from Idaho, where he helped the legislature and the leadership in the Idaho legislature to pass some pro-regenerative farming bills and other bills that are very friendly to the MAHA agenda, and visited a well-known homesteader farmer, hung out with him. There's, fantastic footage and photographs. So Bobby's all in on regenerative farming and homesteading and backing the small farm, all the kinds of stuff we've been writing about now for the last few years, and is the subject of our next book, which is going to be about homesteading for health. So that's kind of a snapshot of where things are at. And then, of course, he retired this notoriously compromised organization called the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, and appointed 8 new members, of which I was privileged to be put up as co-chair, with Martin Koldorf as the chairperson. And the press just lost its cookies. There just was nonstop attacks on Bobby, and particularly on me. My fellow ACIP members from this new group they like to joke that they're glad I'm on the ACIP because all the hate from the press goes at me instead of them.
Lightning rod.
But uh, we're going to bring back a focus on data. We want integrity in the decision making for this federal advisory committee that has kind of grown too big for its britches over the years. It really shouldn't have this much power and influence, but it influences vaccine policy all over the world. And we're the secretary, and I understand the president backs him in this. We've been given free rein to revisit the pediatric vaccine schedule, to ask the hard questions, to insist on the data, all the stuff that hasn't been going on for years and years now lands in our lap, including, unfortunately, this recent authorization for children at high risk for severe COVID of the Moderna Spikevax product. And that's the next thing that we're going to have to deal with. I'm not very happy about it. Uh, but we're gonna insist that the FDA provide both us and the public with the information that was the basis for their decision. And in particular, we want to see what it is they mean when they say high-risk children. Well, what children are you actually talking about? Because pediatricians all over the United States are going to have to say, well, Mrs. Smith, little Johnny has fill in the blank condition, and therefore I'm recommending that he take this mRNA product because presumably there's some data somewhere showing that for little Johnny with his pre-existing condition, the risk-benefit ratio favors taking the product again and again every year, as opposed to not. And a lot of us are pretty skeptical that that's the case, but we're going to give the FDA the opportunity to come clean and share with all of us what the data are that supports that decision, and then we'll make our determination about what we recommend to the CDC director. And to that end, we did make a key recommendation in the first round. We got mercury out of flu vaccines, including in children. And that the way it works with these FACA committees and the ACIP is that all they do is advise. They make a vote. There's, the press is there, it gets streamed. Everybody thinks it's a big deal, but in fact, the ACIP has it's a mouse that roared, but it's a little bit of a toothless mouse. None of its recommendations actually are put into effect until the director of the CDC signs off on them or not. And you might ask yourself, well, what happens if the Senate is slow walking the confirmation of the director of the CDC? Well, I was wondering the same thing. And then just recently, like last week, we found out the answer. The secretary of HHS gets to make the call. And so Bobby got all of the press of finally getting thimerosal and mercury out of vaccines, in the flu vaccines in particular, which has been a hot button for him for, since he was still 30 something, I think, because of the water keepers and all of that he's been through. This has been a long standing issue for him, getting the mercury out of vaccines, and he's finally done it. So I'm glad to have some small role in enabling that. So there's your update.
Because you're not a myopic person. You don't have blinders on. At like the 100,000 foot level, does you'll have to excuse my lack of a more formal analogy, but me and my buddies are playing a game called Helldivers, where you're essentially futuristic Marines. You're deployed all over the galaxy. You're just fighting robots. It's run and gun. And we call it getting lost in the sauce when you stop doing objectives and you just get pinned down and you're just focusing on each target. And in reality, if you pull up the map, you can find, because they're robots, you can find fabricators where they come out of. And if you can get your bearings about you and stop freaking out, you can actually go hit the fabricator. And once you start hitting those, well, now there's just a finite amount left. If you don't hit those, it'll go forever. You got lost in the sauce. And we
It's the
have to,
Matrix.
yeah, we have to remind ourselves, right? We're like, stop, we're pinned down. We got to start moving. The first Trump administration kind of seemed more like lost in the sauce, where they're just eating everything at once. It was like the military's bad and the CIA's bad, and also the news is fake, and Mexicans are rapists, and Rosie O'Donnell's fat, and like just every which way you turned, it just seemed like he was just getting punched in the face or stuff thrown at the back of his head. Now it seems, and you can always tell when this is the case because, like the game, it's less fantastic and lights up, but it's more methodical, and you can't really tell. But once it's over and it takes 30 minutes, you slowly start to see less and less and less. And then in hindsight, you can go, "Oh, there was a method to the madness. You guys were shutting down." It seems now more like it's less, and there's part of it is we've developed a sort of tolerance to the absurdity and the pearl clutching of the media from the first administration. But it seems now like it's more methodical. I mean, first thing is like button up the border. Next thing is like cut USAID, put Bobby in charge of HHS. All these things, this seems a lot more methodical and not just kind of bull in a china shop. It looks a lot more like it's not the bull jumping around, but 100 yards and over the hill is a guy with a bazooka. And it's like, yeah, give it a second. It's going to get it, and it's actually going to do a lot more damage in this scenario, damage being a good thing. Just from your kind of where you are, and, again, writing something like Psy War, which is a much broader topic than just medicine, do you get that? Am I completely off the mark? Does not seem like it's more of a methodical. I mean, just from something simple like get Americans less fat. Why? Well, it's like, well, that's a huge burden on the healthcare system, which has a much larger budget than the DoD. It just seems more like it's more of a methodical USAID, just going after that, firing this person, firing that person, ending these alliances. We're not paying for that. We're not doing this. It just seemed, and it makes sense. I mean, it's his second term. They tried to kill him. He's a billionaire and he's in his 80s. Like every one of those on their own points to like, yeah, man, go for it. Who cares? But all four of them are like, yeah, go for it. Who cares? From where you're sitting and what you see, does it seem like that? Obviously, I like Trump. Am I biased towards it? Am I like reading my own press release and I'm like, oh, this is all great? But does that question make sense at all?
Yeah, so I think it's a combination of being more methodical and strategic, and a goodly amount of chaos. There's no getting around the fact that, for instance, the decision to authorize the Moderna product was not communicated up the chain of command. Now, it turned out that Bobby was on the boat at that particular time, and his right-hand person, Stephanie Spear, had just gone on vacation also. Neither one of them were notified. And the people don't realize that the secretary does not have a magic wand that he can wave and he or she can wave and past FDA decisions go away. There are firewalls between the secretary and the political apparatus and the decision making at FDA. So all of this how come Bobby didn't stop that and this kind of jibber jabber? That's not the way the system works. And good thing too, because administrations change and we would have absolute chaos if it was anything otherwise. So, but absolutely there was a failure to communicate. And that's a reference to Cool Hand Luke, in case you didn't get it. and uh, and whether this was cause and effect or not, as soon as Bobby got back, there was a major restructuring of leadership underneath him, chief of staff and deputy chief of staff, and that restructuring is ongoing right now. So after whatever it's been, 6 months or whatever, I think it's less than that. There's they've kind of done the trial run, the shakedown cruise. They've determined that they got to move around some of the positions. Some people have to find nice lobbyist jobs and no longer work for the administration. And I hear that that reorg has gone fairly well, but it's still a fair amount of chaos. As you'd expect, the bureaucracies, the existing structures within all of these HHS divisions and across the entire government is very biased towards the left. And they are not very happy about the changes that are happening, and they have all kinds of tricks to make it very hard to implement change, which is a big part of why I absolutely did not want an administrative position in this government. I'm very happy to serve in the ACIP. Um, I don't get paid. It's a voluntary position for all of us. We get a stipend of, wait for it, $250 a day for the 6 days that we're in Atlanta every year. And that is just a tiny fraction of all the work that we put in because there's subcommittees and Zoom calls. I mean, I had a stupid amount of Zoom calls when I was on the boat, ostensibly on vacation. But we have to, get the business done because we have another meeting coming up in September. So that's just the way it is. But for these line folks, like to give an example, Benet Prasad, who is the director of the Center for Biologics Evaluation and Research. So he took Peter Marks's old job at FDA. And so he reports to Marty McCarty. And Benet was the one that authorized the Moderna Spikevax product for high-risk children. And the base just blew up at him. But what they don't realize is that his people wanted a full authorization for the Pfizer product, the Moderna product, and the Novavax product before the termination of the emergency use authorization. As we all know, there's no longer a medical emergency, but they've somehow kicked the can down the road and kept the EUA open for the vaccine products. And they're looking to prepare for when that gets stopped. And the concern was that for high-risk children, there wouldn't be anything. And if the EUA terminates, and so they needed to authorize something. Furthermore, I think Marty makes the case in a recent interview that they can't insist that the companies do certain clinical research that ought to be done if they don't license it. Once they license it, they kind of got their hooks in the system and they can insist that they do follow-up studies that we've all, including blinded studies, that we've all been looking for. But Prasad really took it in the chin because of doing this. But the truth is that he really fought against his bureaucracy. They're not happy with him. They wanted all this stuff completely licensed for all these different products. And he said no. He just chose the one that he thought was safest of the lot and gave this very narrow authorization. But that kind of obstructionism and gaming and backbiting and everything else is going on across the whole of government. And my heart goes out to these poor souls that accepted those positions because they just have an endless amount of grief, and it doesn't help when the base is busy without understanding the system, busy accusing them of being controlled opposition or false flags or, all this kind of stuff that they've accused me of also. They don't realize how hard it is to govern in this environment. So I think when you take in all of the stuff that all the resistance and obfuscation and the ginned up lawfare and everything else that's going on, I think the Trump administration is making amazing strides. It's almost daily still, just like in the first couple of weeks. And I think Bobby's doing a great job. And I think Dr. Prasad certainly, from what I hear, regrets that the chain of command above him didn't inform the secretary in a timely fashion of his decision. But that's not his fault. It's other people's responsibility to do that. I mean, the government is huge and everybody's supposed to stay in their little silo. And if you go outside your silo, then the govies just attack like a swarm of orcs because you're not recognizing your boundaries. So that's what I see going on. I see a lot of good stuff. I see a lot of challenges. I see a fair amount of chaos. I see learning and restructuring and adapting to this climate and this environment ongoing. And I think that people are going to be surprised at the next Maha Commission report and what goes down. But you can't fight City Hall. I don't know how the resistance from big chemical and big ag, I don't know how that's going to resolve itself. That's something that everybody that's listening to this, if you care, you got to get engaged and call your Congress critters and tell them that you're not okay with providing indemnification to the pesticide and herbicide industry.
Hey there! Are you tired of skyrocketing subscription costs? With Q Broadcast, you get an entertainment package that is unmatched by other providers, with all your favorite content in one affordable bundle. Enjoy a 15-day trial for just $14.99. And if you refer 3 friends and they stick around, your subscription is free. Say goodbye to high-priced subscriptions, contracts, and hassles, and say hello to streaming simplicity with Q Broadcast. This changes everything.
Heaven's Harvest Prepper Food. 72 servings per pail, 25 years shelf life. I've had the owner Clayton on the show before. He's a God-fearing, America-loving patriot. Get one of these, get a couple of them, throw them in your basement. It's good to have it, not need it, than to need it and not have it. If you don't want to do that, you can get their seeds. You can plant your own garden, so you don't even have to keep buying them. You can just get the goods and start your own, or you can even get freeze-dried fruits and vegetables like bananas, apples, strawberries, and raspberries. They support the show. It's an honest product. It's a good safety measure to have, and they keep my show free for you. So I'd implore you guys to please go to heavensharvest.com, use the link in the description, promo code TPC. Axios Fitness Coaching is a premium resource for holistic strength and conditioning services. Axios is best known for the Training Club, capital T, capital C, an exclusive community that prioritizes accountability, technique, diet, and nutrition. Everything you need to do to take action against the decay of the modern world. Whether you're looking to improve your physique, build strength, or just take care of your health and fitness, Axios will provide you with a solution that is effective and simple to execute. All you need to do is complete the intake survey, and you can see if you're a good candidate for the training club or any other of the services. And it's going to sponsor the show. So, one company falls off, another one arises. So if you guys like the show, you want to work out, throw the show a couple shekels. Go take the survey. Thank you so much, guys.
Higher ultraviolet exposure is associated with lower mortality. The United Kingdom is a high latitude and low sunlight country. Researchers there collected data on over 360,000 participants in a study of UV exposure via solarium use. When compared with non-users, solarium users had 15% risk lowered of all-cause mortality, 23% lower risk of cardiovascular mortality, 14% lower risk of cancer mortality, and a 12% lower risk of non-cardiovascular, non-cancer mortality. In other words, all other causes. Quoting the researchers, our study adds to the growing evidence that the benefits of UV exposure outweigh the risks in low sunlight environments. A link to the original publication is available in the box below the video. Get some UV light this winter. Immerse yourself in the tranquility of the blue. Visit a Blue Room soon. www.blueroom.com.
Is there, there shouldn't be, and if there is, it doesn't matter. You still got to push through. Is there a level of fear, probably deserved, at what the pushback is going to be in what the broad blanket of the entrenched power structure? I mean, the first Trump term, it kind of looked, they looked to be COVID or the summer of love or whatever. You kind of see these things, and you also just can't have that mindset of, well, what are they going to do if we start to smoke them out? It's like, well, what is a pedophile going to do when the SWAT team surrounds his house? Like, who cares? Like, you have to put it to an end. Hopefully he doesn't have a gun, but if he does, he's probably going to come out shooting, and prepare for it. But it's an ultimate end where you do got to do it. It's not that he has a parking ticket and the juice isn't worth the squeeze. Is there some fear about what? And it doesn't, might think, well, then, what can big ag do? Well, I mean, I imagine you could, if you really wanted to, you could engineer a famine or something, but that's not even it doesn't need to be that. When these things get so large,
so is there fear?
It's well,
I think there is fear the right word? Anxiety, wariness, awareness
tread lightly,
of risk and threat. Absolutely. To illustrate the point, I talked earlier about the AstroTurf strategy of
the soda
industry, hiring conservative influencers. There's lots of signs of all kinds of chaos agents on social media right now. There was a leaked memo from the Bio Trade Organization. There's two major trade organizations that represent the pharmaceutical industry. One is called Pharma, and that is more aligned with traditional drug manufacturers. The other is Bio, which is the organization that has represented the biotechnology industry. Increasingly, the biotechnology has become the main source for pharmaceutical industry revenue, and so the two being separate is a little bit redundant now, but that's still the case. So there was a leaked memo from Bio like 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. That was the product of a meeting in which they came together with their lobbyists and their sponsors and identified Secretary Kennedy as the major threat that they face currently. So they perceive him as a threat. They have fear about Kennedy and the disruption that will come with a Make America Healthy Again agenda, for good reason, and the disruption that will come with the new Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices and all these others. And so they allocated a war chest of $2 million to take out Bobby. And I'm sure that's just a drop in the bucket compared to what they're going to be spending. So there's no question that they unapologetically are treating the secretary, and I'm sure the president, as a significant threat, as is the press. I mean, when you think about what the coverage that's going down, and you look at the numbers of what's happening in corporate media, they are economically collapsing. And they're stuck in a bizarre death spiral of chasing clicks and likes and engagement. And they're so desperate, they're down to the point that they kind of don't care if you're clicking on their article because you think it's absurd or because you agree with it. They just want the click. And so they'll say all kinds of stuff that is really egregious in order to get the clicks and likes and follows and engagement that is the kind of the residual of the metric that their sponsors, their advertisers rely on. My wife, Jill, likes to point out that at some point, pharma is going to see the ROI, the return on investment of their sponsorship of corporate media as not sufficient. The juice isn't worth the squeeze. And then the whole industry is just going to collapse like a house of cards. That's kind of where they're at right now. And they see Trump, they see Rogan as a major existential threat. And they want to do anything they can to take these people out and simultaneously to build up left-wing podcasters. That's another trend that's happening right now on Substack and Spotify and everything else. But is there fear in the Trump administration? No, I don't see that. And maybe that's the gift, to borrow a phrase from Gavin, the gift of fear. Maybe that's the gift of the assassination attempts.
Yeah.
I mean, Trump now has been in the middle of the tempest. He's weathered the storm. He came out with fight, 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 not, oh, I'm going to go crawl in a corner. And he beat this, Kamala Harris, Tim Walz. Well, that's where did they come up with that in the first place? That was just destined to fail. But he beat him, and he beat him like a drum. And this is his last term. He don't have anything to lose.
Yeah.
And so I think that's, he was wandering in the wilderness. He was in purgatory for 4 years, for a term, subjected to enormous harassment. And I think he's a better person for it and a better president for it. It's really, as you point out, he seems to have come out swinging and very focused. So the question I have is, are they going to be able to hold the Senate and the House in the midterms? I think everybody's focused on that right now, to be honest. And if they do, then who's going to be the next president? Is it going to be JD? Is it going to be Bobby? Is it going to be Tulsi? Who's going to step in and be the successor that's got to carry the torch? Is it going to be Ron DeSantis? I'm hearing rumbles of that again. So, it's interesting times and good times to be a conservative. I think we need to, pinch ourselves from time to time and remember, as I said at the beginning, we are winning. We haven't won, but we are winning.
Yeah, no, we've definitely come a long way just from 4 years ago, and just for my own to be sure, like me saying earlier, what are these companies or things going to do in backlash? That's obviously me running my mouth and not Dr. Malone's opinions. But when I said something about like big ag, what I was getting to was, once you get to a certain size, you don't need to do something specific to your industry. Like, a small bar, they can ban you from coming back. If you own 10,000 bars across the country, you're no longer limited to that. You can start hiring private eyes, you can harass people, you can get assassins. Like, it's a whole different game, to where it doesn't really matter what industry you come from if you've just got that much money. And it seems like that's going to be a pushback to, and I was just wondering, like, you think at a certain point you would just, not even from like a change of heart, not some like Grinch moment, but just from like some pure psychopath moment, some rather Grinch, but Gordon Gekko, at a certain point, do you not just pivot and go, man, tides are turning, they really want to remove mercury and make people less fat, like, how do we get in on the ground? At a certain point,
exactly.
At a certain point,
how do we recognize and exploit the business opportunities associated with that?
It's not even a romantic delusion of like they have a change of heart. No, like, where is the coked up CEO? Like, wait, everything's turning. Like, let's get into like freshly picked fruit. Like, Like, where's that? Like, where's the ingenuity behind that? Of like, yeah, the bottom line's going up. That's what I'm curious about it. Because isn't that the real? I mean, at the very apex, you have people who are truly evil and just want power. But the people that kind of carry it out through private companies, yeah, they want it's fiduciary responsibility. At a certain point, do you not have that? Just like, yeah, mRNA free beef,
I'm
like
with
get
you.
on the ground floor, carrots, whatever.
What's going to happen to these folks if JD Vance gets in?
Yeah, now you're
And they got
looking at
another 4
yeah,
years. It's not going to be sustainable to continue endorsing wokeism.
yeah. Like, I mean, like Amazon buying Whole Foods. Like, no part of me thinks Jeff Bezos cares about anyone's health. And no, I'm not even putting him down. In the way I don't care about anyone's health. I'm too busy with my own stuff. Like, where's the profit? And then before I forget this idea, when you see these kind of huge or formerly huge news outlets, yeah, falling down to that, and I see it more just the clickbait stuff. Like, is Trump really even president anymore? And it's like CNBC, and it's like, what are you doing? Like, that's fascinating. And then with cutting USAID, and you can kind of see the ripple effects months later. You know, how many things were being funded by that? It does make me think of what you're saying about those like little towns in Italy. Some things are, I mean, I think like New York City, like, yeah, it's like it's the urban capital of the planet, and it probably should be in like a grid formation. Like, I get that. But there is something a little more romantic. And the grass is always greener, and I get that. There is something a little more romantic about when you do see those pictures of Italy or Greece or something, just these winding towns where it does seem like it grew organically a lot, which is very different from, you know, those like pre-planned cities and suburbia.
Very different from 15-minute cities.
That's what I mean. And so if you were to extrapolate simply that pattern, nothing else, but simply that pattern, and put it on something like the news, you can kind of see like the friction of the oil and the water hitting. And that when you see those articles about like, we need to create a left-wing Joe Rogan, it's like, that's, you don't get it, is like, they're not created. They just happen.
Yeah.
Like, they just, some things you can push and music you can push, but there's a reason why, like, certain sneakers, it's like, yeah, it doesn't hurt my knees when I run. It's just what it is. It doesn't need to be a psyop or an astroturf. And you can kind of see the remnants of those like pre-planned things of like the talking points, all the BS talking points and all the scheduled things, all of that lies on the back of backdoor funding to where it doesn't matter if it works. We're getting money from the government. But when those things are cut, you do have to have these, again, like these organically planned, unplanned cities that just kind of, you know, well, why is that store shaped like that? And it's like, well, it's on the corner of it's on the curving end of a hill. Well, why is there a hill? I don't know. It's rock. We didn't remove it. And it's like, who planned this? Like, no one. It started 1,500 years ago. It's just, cobblestones and and just, you almost can see the contrast to those pre-planned things and where they fall short without constant upkeep. And in this case, the upkeep is full spectrum control of the media and censorship, as well as backdoor funding and approved talking points. You kind of see it falling flat now that it was not a naturally occurring thing.
Well, how many times do we have to run the experiment about central planning?
I think infinite. I don't.
It's like one of those memes where you start off with Marx and then something gets implemented and eventually everybody gets shot.
Yeah.
And then the explanation is, well, that wasn't real
communism.
communism.
We'll
now we're going to try it with the real communism, and around it goes again.
Yeah. Yeah, no, what if we just centrally plan no failure for the central plan? Like, that doesn't make sense. But like, at a certain point, you do see it kind of falling flat. And I imagine on a big enough timeline, if you were to zoom out, not even in this year, last year, the last president, but if you were just to look out at just decades and centuries, yeah, it makes sense. You kind of get this coalescence of power and corporate money and overreach in like the 80s, 70s, 80s, your Bretton Woods, and then NAFTA, and then all the as it just gets tighter and tighter and tighter, and you're still running on the inertia of a post World War II economy. So the reality of your bad actions aren't hitting you because you still have all this momentum. Again, it's like 1990s America was kind of the trust fund kid. We weren't earning that. We had it. And then it sat there kind of bloated for like the 90s, 2000s. You saw a little more, '08 financial crisis, maybe 9/11, maybe COVID. But it's hitting a point now where it's like you're not Rockefeller 2, you're like Rockefeller 5. And like so now even your grandpa is actually just a shithead trust fund kid. Like the real guy isn't even there anymore to go talk to. He can't go talk to the original Carnegie, and he smacks you around and tells you how to behave. It kind of seems like this bloated thing. All the corners were cut, and it makes sense. It's money and deregulation. And now the rubber's hitting the road, and it's like these things don't work. And you can also only do them so many times before people just stop accepting it. And I imagine in 50 years, we'll look at what's happening in the Trump administration and accept it as like inevitable. Like, yeah, that was going to happen. It couldn't have not happened. Not really a question in there, just an observation. But yeah, it seems like right now what's happening is it's very big and it's very intense and we're in it. But if you were to really zoom out, it's probably no different than just like billiard balls kind of hitting the walls. And just, it makes sense. You can almost predict where it would go, except it takes a century for the ball to move an inch. And so it's hard to tell. But I feel like that's what makes sense. And lastly is it also makes sense. There is almost a sort of relief in the assassination attempt because that was the final card. You said he was a Russian asset, and then you had Mueller and all that, and then you said he's 34 felonies, and then you'd say he can't run because of X, Y, and Z. And when all of that happened, they finally went, all right, just blow his head off. And that didn't work. It seems like that was the final. So you have the true zealots that probably still want him dead. I think under that, you probably just have like a lot of CEOs or independently wealthy dudes that are like, hey, we gave it the old college try. Tide's turning. Looks like we just got to get on board with this whole healthy thing. Yeah, whatever. Mercury's bad. Start shorting Mercury.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, to your point, the latest polling is showing from Rasmussen and others that the Democratic Party brand is at its lowest point ever in basically recorded polling. So I think we have turned the tide. I personally feel like I've been rehabilitated a little bit politically. The other day, the topic of Wikipedia came up, and I looked up my wiki page, which is usually an exercise in
Patience.
In defamation, and so I generally don't look at it. And I was shocked. It was almost favorable. It still had Davey Alba, the New York Times, blah, blah, blah. And he was a spreader of misinformation during COVID, without ever saying what my misinformation sin was. But for the most part, it was kind of normal. It talked about that I married my high school sweetheart. It didn't say anything about the books. It didn't say anything about Substack. I think that's going to get fixed. But, it was almost normal. And getting appointed to the ACIP and the press losing its cookies. And then as people have been listening and watching, they're kind of like, well, like that makes sense. And he is doing what he said he was going to do. And so is the committee. They're judging by the data. They're not just anti-vaxxer zealots like the press said. And they certainly aren't people that don't know anything about vaccines. That's a false narrative. So in the end, it feels like the press has overreached so much. The propaganda has overreached so much that and the lies during COVID were just so extreme that people could see what was going on, and they've carried that forward. Now, I was just on Brian Rose's podcast 2 days ago from London, and he said, well, what about Cywork? you got this book out, is all the cyber stopped, etc. And one of the major chapters there talks about the 77th Brigade in the UK, which developed a lot of this, we could call it tech, and the Mutton crew that operationalizes it, etc. And I said, Brian, 77th Brigade has not gone away. The Mutton crew has not gone away. What has happened is that things have gotten a lot more subtle. And in particular, the utilization of artificial intelligence has become the new Wikipedia. And people are very glad to accept, constrained answers from artificial intelligence, natural language processing based programs that sound very authoritative, definitive, and unless you tell them not to sound authoritative and definitive, which puts the lie to the whole thing. But for most people, they're, well, what does Grok say? As their way now of processing what is true and false. And that just creates the opportunity that's being exploited for the bad actors to manipulate Grok or whatever your favorite artificial intelligence is. So it feels like all this stuff is still going on. Some of it is still pretty raw. We still have a lot of efforts on social media that are pretty transparent to divide the base, split MAGA from Maha, divide Maha. Maha now is one of the strongest political movements in the United States. It's really gained a lot of traction and momentum, and it is a major threat to a variety of established interests. And so what they're doing, it's clear, is they're hiring people to try to divide the base. And to some extent it works. Then there's the ignorant follower-ons that just accept those narratives and then promote them themselves. There's the whole outrage farming that's going on with some influencers where they're just constantly trying to come up with the next outrageous thing that everybody will click and like and follow. So all that stuff is still going on, but I think a lot of people have just gotten tired of it. And I think, to some extent, maybe the book helped, but people have become much more aware of the psychological manipulation that they're being exposed to. And they are becoming more resistant, just like I hoped they would. Just like we all learned about Madison Avenue advertising, and we became more resistant to it as children, as we were growing into our adolescence and being bombarded with all this stuff. And now it's harder to sell us cornflakes in using the same methods as before. So I think the same thing is happening on social media, and I think we need to just relax about it, not do our own outrage farming, our own spinning up of anxiety and fear and anger and all of those bad emotions. Just let it play. Don't highlight these people. Don't play into their game. Just stay balanced and keep calm and carry on, right? And I think we'll win.
It's it's almost that, like, I was gonna say one of my favorite comedians, Duncan Trussell, who's my favorite quote of his is somewhere some poor fool without a phone is sitting next to a waterfall at a sunset, unaware of how scared he's supposed to be. That's a great one. I think the next best one by him is, excuse my French, human history really is essentially smaller and smaller concentric rings of assholes gatekeeping information who eventually fail. And then it goes back in and it tightens up from Gutenberg or before that, just the written language. You can't talk to God. Smaller and smaller and smaller. And so it makes sense that sort of the immune response to this would be, right, it doesn't kill you, so people will learn from it. But it's also, and we'll wrap it up with this, it's that sort of somewhat, I don't know, it's a mixture of like excitement and exhaustion. But we're like, when you read about, if you ever just listen to some, 30-hour audiobook about specifically the Pacific Theater in World War II, and it's just the supply lines and the deaths and just the trauma and chaos, and it's just nonstop. And like, the ending, it eventually ends with Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and then it's finally like peace, and there's a moment of like, put your feet up. But you start to read, and it really is like out of a movie. It's always these guys in suits that are like, the job's not over. Like, we're about to go toe to toe with the Soviets. And it's like, but we just finished. And it really is, though. You go toe to toe with the Soviets, and the whole thing continues. And you got to get a breather and keep going. But, or Fukuyama's thing, right? The whole end of history. And it's like, that wasn't the case at all. So to me, there's this timid, like, yes, we're winning. Like, I can't believe we're just from 4 years ago. And it's like, man, people are able to like spot, psyops easily. And it's like a meme now. It's the frog, and it's like, I wake up, there's another psyop, or like there's a form. It's like permission slip from my mom. Like, I'm ignoring this particular psyop. Thank you. Like, I'm not doing this one. And it's like, okay, yeah, we get here. It's like, it's the end of the movie, the sun's shining. But and I don't know what it is, but the next thing's coming.
Oh yeah.
It seems to be something with AI and transhumanism and like brain hacking.
AI, transhumanism, and drones.
Drones and space exploration. They all, I don't know. If you went back to like 1945 and you asked them, like, they could probably feel Cold War was coming, but without the ability of hindsight, if we're time travelers, I think some smart guys would say like, it's going to be nukes. It's going to be rockets and probably something with the moon. And he'd be like, you're pretty spot on. And computers, you're pretty spot on. They don't know what it is, but they can feel it.
Hey, Tommy,
Yeah.
here's something to chew on in closing.
Yeah.
Um, uh, the other day I had two FBI agents come to the farm
Oh, yeah.
to interview me about what I'd experienced during the censorship and defamation and all that during COVID.
That's why.
Because they were launching an investigation about the people that were doing this kind of stuff, including within the federal government.
Wow.
And as they were going out the door, we had the woman Justine, that is our special person within Malone.news that focuses on UAPs. So she was there, and she just couldn't help herself. She asked, do you know anything about the UAPs? And one of them piped up and said, in the investigation, she said, well, I can't talk about it because I'm actively involved in supporting those investigations, but I can tell you that a lot more activity is happening now.
Oh, God.
That's data point number one, and that they're real. Okay. Data point number two, I'm talking to my friend and mentioned this while we were on the boat, and he says, oh, Bobby had a briefing, and all of this stuff is true. Roswell, all those things, the reverse engineering, the origin of the night vision, a whole bunch of this tech comes out of reverse engineering recovered material. And so stay tuned on that. It sounds like there is absolutely there. And we can look forward to, as you're talking about the future, we can look forward to learning a lot more about what the heck is going on with these, whether they're time travelers and they're humans coming back, or they're from another dimension, or they're whatever, fill in the blank. But apparently it's real.
I'm such a UFO head. That makes me so happy. Just as a data, it's as another data point. A bunch of ex-CIA guys have had on the show a million times. Either operatives, boots on the ground, or analysts involved in like some insanely like Osama bin Laden stuff. a lot of them have been like politely declining shows, saying that they're working again. And I'm like, and these are all like legit good guys. These aren't guys where I'm like, oh god, they're about to do something. These are like the Captain America guys I know. So another data point, and I'm like, all right, and it's a good nervousness that maybe something good's happening. But and we will officially wrap it up with. But that's one thing I'd always thought about evidence of, quote unquote, good guys winning. And a lot of the military guys talked to, and higher up guys, generals, they kind of all agree that something happened after they popped Kennedy, and there was some form of counter movement and incredibly small, incredibly secret, realizing that we were in an occupied government and it's been there for 60 years and growing and growing and growing. And Trump isn't it. Trump is just a chosen front person. There's been other front people. But one thing they said is like, and then you would kind of know that it's really underway in what we talked about earlier, where it seems more like they're actually shutting down the centers of these things. And this is where I think they lose a lot of people, but not me. To be like, and you could really tell for sure when they start going into the black projects, the Area 51, the UFO, the Nevada, and you start seeing these things that, to quote Ben Rich, the CEO of Skunkworks, which did the SR-71 Blackbird and the F-117 Nighthawk, we have the power to go to the stars, but these things are locked up in black projects that would take an act of God to be unsealed, but if they were, they would help humanity. These are some proxies, these are some indicators that something good is happening, which is very weird. It's like a beaten puppy. I'm like scared to accept it, but like something good is happening. So yeah, I don't know. This might be like the cheeriest ending I think we've ever had. So
that's a good point to break until we discuss again.
Yes, sir. Everybody listening, please go in the description. Please go follow him on Twitter. Please go follow him on Substack, on Getter. You can also go grab the two books, Lies My Government Told Me and Cywar. You've been on here for both of those books before. They're very good. Cywar is a fascinating read, and it's probably, I would still say, very pertinent to everybody. But yeah, man, as always, I love having you on here. You are the most interesting man in the world, and I appreciate your time.
Look forward to our next chat.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. Guys, thank you for watching.